Well, they call me the Fireman. That's my name. Making my rounds all over town, putting out old flames. Yep, that kind of day. And in through the smoke appears the fire chief of South Polk County for the third time in 2 years, Chris.
It's way too often.
It's way too often. Well, it's a really fun day here at Longhorn Lester's. I would like to point out that this is the third time in 2 years that the fire department's been here. And I would also like to point out that I was working. Chris is here. Little Chris. Big Chris is on his way. Could have been worse. Could have been so much worse. And in through the smoke appears the fire chief of South Polk County for the third time in 2 years, Chris.
It's way too often.
It's way too often. Well, I'm embarrassed to admit that Fire Chief Chris is here with my water hose putting out the fire. Now, in my defense, little Chris and I had it mostly under control by the time he got here, and now we're just walking around to make sure it's completely out, because all of a sudden the wind will pick up and we see another little tidbit of smoke. I see one right over here smoking. Part of the reason that this started on fire was there's a lot of pine needles, and they get to be about a couple inches thick, and they catch on fire like they are a piece of paper, actually faster than a piece of paper. They're probably the best fire starter that I know of. Nonetheless, all is well. Few fence boards compromised. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be totally fine.
You gonna be a fireman now?
I'm not gonna be a fireman now.
You put it out.
It doesn't matter. No.
You qualify.
I don't.
Yes, you did.
Nope, I'm good. No need to. I'm not gonna be part of the fire department. No thanks. No more. This is 3 times in 2 years. That's too much. Too often to see you, Chris. Sorry.
See, I feel the love.
Well, I'm beginning to think that my greatest tool at Longhorn Lester's is that. It's definitely that. Yeah. A water hose. Greatest tool invention that I've ever had, actually. Grateful for Fire Chief Chris and his miraculously fast response. Grateful for little Chris, who was out weed eating and came up and said, "Jamie, call my dad right now, tell him to bring the brush truck." And I hopped up out of my office and ran out. And when I got out here, he had done quite a bit, but didn't realize that this hose was as close as it was. So poor little Chris was running with a bucket. Thank God he's a marathon runner. But basically what happened, things were burnt and the wind picked up and blew something. And let me show you how Chris pointed that out to me. And then it blew some more this way, which eventually landed here. And up there, all structures besides some fencing are okay. All animals are okay and all people are okay. So this was much less damaging than it could have been. So thank you to the action of little Chris, Fire Chief Chris, and my handy dandy Beaver water hose. All right, I came out to make my checks. Now I have hourly rounds as well as much as humanly possible to walk out here, specifically today, because I'm just nervous. Boy, I guess nobody has to weed eat back here for some time. Fires are scary to me, y'all. So scary. And I guess I'm a whole lot more conscious and aware than maybe some people are. But again, I'm glad nobody got hurt today. Really glad that it's still out. I'm walking along here and just both feeling and looking to make sure there's no hot spots. and that nothing is still smoking. I don't see anything that is. It certainly smells crispy, toasted. It didn't affect my kitty area, even though they live in the greenhouse now. We won't talk about that today either. Everything looks okay out here. As okay as it can be. Definitely melted some buckets off of my really fabulous garden post here, but the least of our concerns, to be honest. I do see a little bit of smoke right here. And the good news is when Fire Chief Chris was here, he kind of told me, he goes, listen, if you see things like this, there's nothing left for it to burn around it. So don't freak out about that. He goes, it's more about the stuff that's on the edges. And he goes, just run the hose out here a few more times today and just get it calmed down, because if this starts to have a flame, it's going to burn out pretty quick unless the wind picks up and tosses it over the edge. And I do see a little bit more on the edge with those pine needles. Hi, sweetie. And I don't think you should be out here. So I will get the hose and squirt that down a little bit. Well, today was a little bit more crazy than I anticipated it being. I was working, just working, and one might think that it's a Thursday. 100% not a Thursday. A knock on the door came and it was really hard, which freaked me out because I knew that Lester wasn't here and little Chris was here. It's his week off work, week off school, picking up some extra hours and helping around the farm. So the knock came and the door flung open, and I had just hung up a Zoom call, and he says, call my dad, tell him to bring the brush truck, do it now. And the door stayed open, and I was like, okay. So I pick up my phone, I call Fire Chief Chris, not 911, and I go grab my boots and I come outside. And well, let me show you. I need to preface this by saying that everyone is okay. No animals or humans or buildings, structures were harmed today. And that it was an accident and no one is to blame, but we can still learn from today's event. And now I'm allowed to laugh about how things went, and I'm allowed to make jokes, but only because of all of those things that add up to that. I can't even speak. So I've made jokes about little Chris not wanting to do any more weed eating, or maybe that he didn't like the location of the fence, or perhaps he wanted a greater riverfront view than what we have had to date. But even as I'm coming up here hours later, I am still seeing things smoldering, and I will get the hose back out to water it down some more, because today could have been significantly worse than it was. And I'm really grateful that everyone and everything is okay. We haven't had rain in quite a few weeks, so things are very toasty, dry here. I actually asked Fire Chief Chris about, hey, is there a burn ban that I missed or something like that? He told me that there is no burn ban currently, but they've been trying to get one. It takes a lot of hoops to jump through with the county. It's not just their fire department or their region. It has to be county-wide, and I understand all of the layers of bureaucracy and business and everything like that. And last year was scary enough with the massive fire back here from whatever explosion happened that could have crossed over. And today we got lucky with being able to put it out with the water hose and some quick action. I do have to say this, quick action from little Chris. A lot of times in emergencies, it's very easy to panic and not communicate well. And that's one thing that I've been taught in any code response thing or any medical emergency, is that someone must take charge. Someone must give clear, distinct orders of, you call 911 or you do this. And when little Chris came to my door today and said, call my dad right now and tell him this, and ran out the door, I followed that because little Chris has, number one, never spoken to me that way. He's always like, hey, Miss Jamie, very casual, and I could hear the panic in his voice. I didn't stop to ask questions to figure out what was going on. I didn't sway and call 911 or anything like that because I knew that at some point in time, he knew exactly what he needed, and I had to put some faith in that until I could see it on my own. Like I said, we got very lucky, but I am an advocate for the burn ban in Polk County, Texas right now, probably in other counties as well, but specifically here. So I told Fire Chief Chris, like, hey, whatever you need me to tell people, happy to jump in and show them pictures and other things, because while our grass isn't necessarily brown yet, it is very toasty and crispy, and there are leaves falling and pine straw that has fallen, and well, there's no moisture whatsoever. So thank you again to South Polk County Volunteer Fire Department. There we go. Fire Chief Chris, and to little Chris, and to that guy too. Yeah, big day.